example of graphing a sine function. For this case, the only thing that I've adjusted on the sine function is its amplitude, which is the number that sits directly in front of the sine function itself. So if the amplitude of this is 2, the only thing that's going to change is sine is still going to run its regular period from 0 to 2 pi, but the height of it is going to be increased by 2. It's like putting this angle in a radius 2 circle. It's going to go too high and too low. A normal sine function starts in the middle at 0, so it'll have this point. At pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi, we're going to get our normal coordinates. The sine will go high, but it's going to go all the way up to 2. Then it's going to come back to the middle at pi. Then it's going to drop down to negative 2 at 3 pi over 2, and then back to the middle at 2 pi. So when we graph this, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to go in that pattern. And of course it continues on that way in both directions. So that would be graphing 2 sine of x. And just to make it look a little prettier, this is a computer generated version, the red one here, of 2 sine of x. For this next one, we're going to be graphing a cosine function, but instead of the 2 being on the outside affecting the amplitude, I'm going to put the 2 on the inside and see what it does. So basically what happens here is this is an angle, and the normal period of a cosine function is from 0 all the way out to 2 pi. Well, if I let x equal 0 here, we're going to start at 0 again. But if I let x equal 2 pi, we're going to get to 4 pi. Well, that's going to give us 2 periods of this graph. So I want to see what's really going on. So I'm going to make the assumption that 2 of x is going to start off equaling 0, and eventually 2 times x is going to equal the regular period of 2 pi. If I solve this one, I'm going to get x is equal to 0. If I solve this one, I'm going to get x is equal to pi. So as x moves between 0 and pi, this cosine graph is going to be moving between 0 and 2 pi, its normal period. So basically by putting the 2 in the inside, x to the x, we've taken the period and cut it in half. Since we cut the period in half, I have to change the 4 values. To do that, I'm going to use a table. And when I set up this table, I'm just going to cut it into 4 equal pieces. Well, actually 5. This will be for the 0, and then we'll have pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and then finally 2 pi down here at the end. So since I need to cut this into 4 equal pieces, I'm going to take pi and I'm going to actually multiply it by 1/4 to find out what 4 equal pieces of it's going to be. Well, this one's easy. It's just going to be pi over 4. So when I do my cuts, I'm going to start at 0 for sine. The first cut is going to be pi over 4. The second cut is going to be 2 pi over 4, better known as pi over 2. The next one is going to be 3 pi over 4. And then finally 4 pi over 4, better known as pi. And these numbers should always match up. The period that you found up above and the last number you end up on in this chart. Now the bottom of this chart I'm going to use later to do a translation. So right now it's of no use. So when I do my cuts for the cosine, we're going to start cosine, and cosine starts high. The amplitude of this thing is just 1. So the cosine is going to start here. But instead of my normal cuts of 0, pi over 2, pi, and so forth, we're going to do 0, pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. So I'm going to be looking for my pi over 4. Well, it's not listed here, but pi over 4 has always happened between the 6 and the 3. So if you start high, it's going to come down and hit the middle at pi over 4, and then it's going to dive down when we get to pi over 2 and go low, so it'll be here. And then it'll come back up at 3 pi over 4, which will happen between the pi over 3 and the pi over 6, so it'll come up here. Ooh, not up. Middle. So it'll be here. And then at pi, it's going to reach its maximum again at 0. Now remember, cosine's a little funny. If you try to draw it here, it's going to look like a V. So I usually continue this on to the next point, which would be middle here. And if you want, you can go to the next one, which would be, well, we can figure this out. It's only 1, 2, 3, every 3 markings. So 1, 2, and so forth and so on. And then if I go backwards, 1, 2, 3 will go down. So the graph of this is going to look something like this. If I overlay it with the computer-generated version, it looks like this. Much smoother than my hand drawing. And if I overlay it with the normal cosine curve, the blue graph here, you can see that 2 periods happen for just 1 period of the cosine curve, the regular cosine curve.